Hello, welcome back to another evening of shared stories and theories. Tonight we're diving into the world of Stranger Things, specifically the finale death predictions and theories for Season 5. I'll be covering all the major characters, the evidence we have so far, and the theories that are keeping fans up at night. There's loads to get through, and honestly, this one's going to be a bit emotional. The finale drops on New Year's Eve, December 31st, 2025, at 8 p.m. Eastern Time or 5 p.m. Pacific. And it's a proper movie-length episode at 2 hours and 8 minutes. It's called The Right Side Up, which is fitting for a show that's been all about the upside down. So, we'll start with the context of where we are in the story after Volume 2. Then we'll go through the characters most likely to die, from the almost certain to the probably safe. We'll talk about Steve Harrington, who everyone's worried about, Jim Hopper's potential second death, and the devastating theory about 11. Plus, loads more predictions and what the Duffer Brothers have actually said about killing off characters. If you like what I do here and want a way to support the channel, consider subscribing down below. But for now, grab your blankets and something cozy to drink, settle in for some theories, and let's begin. Before we get into specific characters, let's talk about the context we're working with. So, before we start speculating about who's going to kick the bucket, let's talk about where we actually are in the story. Stranger Things. Season 5 has been released in 3 parts, which is pretty unusual for Netflix. Volume 1, with episodes 1 through 4, dropped on November 26th, 2025, right around Thanksgiving. Volume 2, episodes 5 through 7, came out on Christmas Day, December 25th. And the finale, episode 8, is coming on New Year's Eve. It's a bit of a marathon, honestly, having to wait between each drop, but it's also meant the show's been dominating conversations for over a month straight. Fun fact, Volume 1 gained nearly 60 million views in its first week. That's massive. Netflix said it was the largest premiere week for an English language show in their history. So yeah, people are proper invested in how this all ends. Now, as for what's actually happened so far, Volume 1 was intense. The season is set in the fall of 1987, and Hawkins is basically under military quarantine after the events of Season 4. The rifts that Vecna opened are still there, scarring the town, and everyone's united by one goal, which is to find and kill Vecna. But he's vanished. No one knows where he is or what he's planning. The government has also intensified their hunt for 11, which means she's back in hiding. The big reveal in Volume 1 was Holly Wheeler getting kidnapped by a Demogorgon. Vecna had been appearing to her as an imaginary friend called Mr. What's It, based on A Wrinkle in Time, which is her favourite book. It's really creepy stuff seeing Jamie Campbell Bower play this friendly character to lure a little girl. By the end of episode 4, titled Sorcerer, Will Byers revealed that he has powers now. Not like Eleven's powers, but he can tap into the hive mind and siphon Vecna's strength. Mike calls him the Sorcerer because in Dungeons & Dragons terms, a sorcerer's powers are innate and drawn from a higher being. In this case, that's Vecna himself. It was a proper jaw-dropping moment. Volume 2 changed everything we thought we knew about the Upside Down. Turns out it's not actually an alternate dimension like everyone believed, it's a wormhole. A bridge between Earth and another planet that Dustin nicknamed the Abyss after the realm of chaos in D&D. The Abyss is where all the Demogorgons and the Mind Flayer actually come from. It's where 11 banished Henry Creel all those years ago when she eviscerated him in the Rainbow Room. So Vecna's been there this whole time, building his fortress and kidnapping children. What's Vecna's plan, you ask? He wants to merge Hawkins with the Abyss using 12 children as vessels to amplify his power. When Will was taken back in Season 1, Vecna channeled his thoughts through him to build the tunnel network under Hawkins. Now he's doing the same thing with Holly, Derek, and the other kids he's kidnapped. With their combined power, he can draw the two worlds together and literally merge them into one. Then he gets to be god of his own twisted reality. The group's plan to stop him is called Operation Beanstalk, which I think is brilliant. Steve came up with it, actually, which shows how much he's grown. The plan is this. They wait until the worlds are close enough together that the WSQK radio tower breaks through the rift into the abyss. Then 11 can use the sensory deprivation bath at Hawkins' lab in the Upside Down to enter Vecna's mind. Max will guide her since she knows his mindscape inside out from being trapped there. Kaylee, who's 11's sister figure, and also known as 8, will piggyback into Vecna's mind with her illusion powers to help fight him. Meanwhile, other members of the party climb the tower to rescue Holly and the other kids. Once they're out and Vecna's defeated, they plant a bomb near the exotic matter, holding the bridge together. When it detonates, the bridge collapses, taking the Abyss, the Mind Flayer, and Vecna's army with it. It's a solid plan, but there are loads of ways it could go wrong. And here's the thing that's got everyone on edge. Not a single main character has died yet. 7 episodes in, and everyone's still alive. Sure, there have been close calls. Karen Wheeler fought off a Demogorgon with a broken wine bottle. Nancy and Jonathan nearly drowned in a room full of exotic matter goo. Holly's been captured, escaped, and recaptured. But no one's actually died. To be honest, I'm surprised by this. I thought we'd lose someone major by now, especially given how the cast reacted at the final table read. Multiple people have said there wasn't a dry eye in the room. David Harbour, who plays Hopper, described the ending as satisfying rather than purely happy or sad. That's the word that keeps coming up. Satisfying. Which suggests bittersweet outcomes where characters get endings that feel earned, even if they're tragic. The Duffer Brothers have also been pretty open about the fact that everything was on the table when they were planning the finale. They literally had character names on a whiteboard with options for who lives, who dies, who stays together, who breaks up. Nothing was off limits. But they've also said they're not trying to shock people or do gratuitous deaths just for the sake of it. As Matt Duffer put it, this isn't Game of Thrones. This is Hawkins, not Westeros. There won't be a red wedding situation. Still, the stakes have never been higher. Vecna's plan is literally to destroy the world as we know it. The finale is over 2 hours long, which is feature film length. And we're heading into the final battle with everyone still alive, which means the body count could be about to spike dramatically. Now that we're all caught up on where things stand, let's get into the actual predictions. And honestly, when it comes to death predictions, there's one name that keeps coming up over and over again. But first, let's talk about how we're actually making these predictions. Because it's not just wild guessing. There are different types of evidence we can use to figure out who might die. The first is narrative arcs. Has a character's story reached a natural conclusion? Have they completed their journey? In horror and sci-fi shows, characters who finish their redemption arcs or achieved their goals are often the ones who get killed off. It's tragic, but it feels earned because their story has meaning. Then there's trailer analysis. People have gone through the Season 5 trailers frame by frame looking for clues. A shot of someone looking emotional. A hand reaching out. Someone in danger. These moments get dissected endlessly. Sometimes they're red herrings, but sometimes they're genuine hints about what's coming. Actor interviews are another source. The cast has been doing press for months, and occasionally they let things slip. Joe Keery, who plays Steve, made a comment about how Steve keeps getting beaten up more and more each season, and the only way to take it further is death. That's the kind of quote that sends fans into a panic. Noah Schnapp said the story started with Will, so it would end with Will, which could mean loads of things, but some people think it means Will's gonna die. The Duffer Brothers themselves have dropped hints too. They've been pretty open about their philosophy on character deaths, which we'll get into more later, but they've said things like, everything was on the table, and the ending will be satisfying, which doesn't really narrow things down. Satisfying could mean everyone lives happily ever after, or it could mean tragic but meaningful deaths. There are also prediction markets now, which is mental. Actual betting sites where people are putting money on which characters will die. Gambling.com has odds for all the major characters. Steve's consistently near the top. 11's odds are complicated because her death would be so controversial. Lucas is at 8-1, which is pretty long odds, so he's probably safe. It's fascinating to see what the crowd thinks, because sometimes the collective wisdom is surprisingly accurate. Fan theories are everywhere, of course. Reddit threads, Twitter discussions, YouTube videos breaking down every detail. Some theories are based on solid narrative logic. Others are based on, like, the colour of someone's shirt in a trailer. You have to sort through a lot to find the ones that actually make sense. What's really interesting is pattern recognition from previous seasons. Stranger Things has killed off beloved characters before. Barb in Season 1, though she wasn't a main character. Bob in Season 2, which was devastating. Eddie in Season 4, whose death the Duffers have said resonates throughout Season 5. There's a pattern there. Usually, it's a supporting character who's close to the main group, but not part of the core kids. Someone whose death will hurt, but won't destroy the foundation of the show. But the Duffers have also been clear that this isn't Game of Thrones. Matt Duffer specifically said they're not going to do gratuitous deaths just to shock people or because fans have a bloodlust. He said if someone dies like Eddie did, it needs to mean something. It needs to resonate. That's actually quite reassuring, because it means any deaths we do get will serve the story rather than just being for shock value. The emotional weight is the last factor. Who would hurt the most to lose? Whose death would have the biggest impact on the other characters and on the audience? That's often a good indicator because writers know that meaningful deaths are the ones that land emotionally. A death that no one cares about is just wasted screen time. So we're looking at all of these factors combined. Narrative arcs, visual evidence, quotes from the people involved, betting markets, fan theories, historical patterns, and emotional weight. Put it all together, and you start to see some names appearing more often than others. And that character, unsurprisingly, is Steve Harrington. Oh boy, this one hurts. Steve Harrington is the character everyone's most worried about, and for good reason. If you've been following the fan theories, the prediction markets, or just scrolling through social media, you've seen his name at the top of nearly every death prediction list. And to be honest, I hate that it makes so much sense. Steve's character arc is basically perfect for a tragic death. He started the series as the stereotypical evil 80s boyfriend, the popular jock who cared more about his hair and his reputation than anything else. He was meant to be the guy you love to hate, but Joe Keery's performance was so charming and the character developed so much depth that the Duffers kept him around. And thank God they did, because Steve Harrington became one of the most beloved characters in the entire show. Over 5 seasons, we've watched him transform from that shallow jock into the group's protector, the babysitter, the guy who will absolutely throw himself into danger to keep the kids safe. He's fought demogorgons with a nail bat, he's been tortured by Russians, he's been dragged into the Upside Down and nearly eaten by demobats. His body has taken an absolute beating season after season, and he keeps getting back up because that's who he is now. He's the protector. Joe Keery himself pointed this out in an interview. He said Steve keeps getting beaten up more and more each season, and the only way to take it further is death, which is not something you want to hear from an actor playing a character you love. But he's not wrong. Where else is there for Steve to go? He's completed his redemption arc. He's proven himself over and over. He's become the person he was always meant to be. What's really interesting is how his role has evolved in Season 5 specifically. The love triangle with Nancy and Jonathan has finally been resolved, and Steve didn't get the girl. Nancy made it clear during her conversation with Jonathan that while Steve is a good guy who makes her laugh, they're ultimately too different. He wants 6 kids and a very specific life. She doesn't know what she wants yet, but she knows it's not that. So that chapter is closed. Steve's no longer pining after Nancy. He's free from that storyline, which in narrative terms can be a bit ominous. But here's what's brilliant about Steve in Volume 2. He's the one who comes up with Operation Beanstalk, the plan to use the radio tower to access the abyss. Dustin even points out how important that is, because Steve never really believes he's very smart, but he absolutely is. It's a moment of recognition. Steve's grown so much that he's not just the muscle anymore. He's contributing ideas. He's a valued member of the team, not just for his bravery, but for his brain. That growth makes his potential death even more tragic. He's finally proven to himself, and everyone else, that he's more than just the guy with the bat. And that's exactly when shows tend to kill characters off, when they've achieved what they needed to achieve. Then there's the Dustin factor. The relationship between Steve and Dustin is one of the purest things in the show. They've got this big brother, little brother dynamic that's just lovely. In Volume 2, they even made a pact, a you die, I die vow, which is romantic in a bromance kind of way, but also terrifying because it feels like foreshadowing. The trailer showed a moment of Dustin hugging Steve, looking absolutely devastated, and fans have been analysing that shot for weeks. Is it a goodbye hug? Is Steve injured? Is he dying? We don't know, but it looks heavy. Fun fact that makes this even worse. Steve was originally meant to die in Season 1. The Duffers planned to kill him off, but Joe Keery's charm and the character's development saved him. So in a way, Steve's been living on borrowed time for 4 seasons. Every moment we've had with him since Season 1 has been a gift. But that also means the Duffers have already thought about what the show would be like without him. They've already written his death once, even if they didn't use it. Would they finally pull the trigger now, in the finale? The protector archetype in horror and genre fiction almost always involves sacrifice. The character who's dedicated themselves to keeping everyone else safe usually goes out saving someone they love. It completes the arc. It's tragic, but it feels earned. Steve sacrificing himself to save Dustin, or the kids, or even the whole group would be absolutely devastating, but it would also be the perfect end to his journey. From selfish jock to selfless hero. That's a complete arc. I don't want it to happen. I will be very sad. Properly gutted, actually. Steve Harrington deserves to survive and get his happy ending, whatever that looks like. Maybe he opens that video rental store he talked about. Maybe he finds someone who actually appreciates him. Maybe he just gets to live a normal life after all this trauma. But wanting something and expecting something are 2 different things. The counter-argument is that killing Steve is too obvious. Everyone expects it. The prediction markets have him near the top. Every fan theory mentions him. Would the Duffers really do the expected thing? They've subverted expectations before. Maybe all this setup is a massive fake-out, and Steve survives precisely because everyone thinks he won't. That would be a twist in itself. There's also the argument that his death would be too painful for the show to handle. Steve's not just beloved by fans, he's beloved by the other characters. Dustin, Robin, the kids, even Nancy and Jonathan in their own ways. His death would shatter the group. It would leave a hole that couldn't be filled. And while that's realistic for the stakes they're facing, it might be too dark for the tone the Duffers are going for. They've said this isn't Game of Thrones. Maybe that means Steve gets to live, but I'm not optimistic. If I'm being completely honest, I think Steve Harrington is in serious danger. The narrative setup is there. The emotional weight is there. The character arc is complete. All the pieces are in place for a heroic, tragic sacrifice. I really hope I'm wrong, but everything points to Steve not making it out of Hawkins alive. Steve's in the danger zone, but let's talk about another character who's already died once before. And that's Jim Hopper, who really can't seem to catch a break. Now, Jim Hopper is an interesting case because the Duffers have already fake killed him once. At the end of Season 3, we watched him seemingly die in that explosion at the Russian facility beneath Starcourt Mall. It was absolutely devastating. Joyce had to turn the keys whilst Hopper was still on the platform, and then he just vanished in the blast. We mourned him. 11 mourned him. The entire audience was gutted, except, of course, he wasn't actually dead. The post-credits scene hinted at it, and then Season 4 confirmed it. Hopper survived the blast, got captured by the Russians, and spent months in a brutal prison camp in Kamchatka. He fought a Demogorgon with a sword and a flamethrower, which was admittedly quite cool. He eventually escaped, reunited with Joyce, and they finally got together after years of dancing around their feelings. So here's the question. Would the Duffers really kill Hopper for real this time, after putting him and the audience through that entire fake-out death storyline? Unfortunately, I think they might. And here's why. Hopper's character arc has been about redemption and sacrifice from the very beginning. When we first met him in Season 1, he was a broken man. His daughter Sarah had died of cancer years before, his marriage had fallen apart, and he was basically sleepwalking through life as the chief of police in a small town where nothing ever happened. Then Will Byers vanished, and Hopper found a purpose again. He threw himself into the investigation, and through that, he found a reason to keep living. His relationship with Eleven is the heart of his arc. He became her father figure, her protector, her Hop. He gave her a home, taught her about the world, and loved her like she was his own daughter. In many ways, 11 replaced the daughter he lost. She gave him a second chance at being a father, and he took it seriously. He spent 4 seasons keeping her safe, even when it meant putting himself in danger. What's really tragic is that Hopper's entire identity is built around protecting the people he loves. That's what he does. That's who he is. And in stories like this, protectors die protecting. It's not a happy pattern, but it's a common one. The character who spent the entire series keeping everyone else alive often doesn't make it to the end themselves. His role in the Season 5 finale plan puts him right in the danger zone. He's helping Eleven and Carly in the Upside Down. He's going to be there when they confront Vecna, when they plant the bomb, when everything goes to hell. He's not sitting safely on the sidelines. He's in the thick of it, which means he's vulnerable. There's a theory that's been floating around for a while now that Hopper will discover Eleven is planning to sacrifice herself, and he'll find a way to take her place. It fits his character perfectly. He's already lost one daughter to circumstances beyond his control. Would he let himself lose another? Or would he do whatever it takes to save her, even if it means dying in her place? I think we all know the answer to that. David Harbour has been quite cagey about Hopper's fate in interviews, which doesn't help the anxiety. He's described the ending as satisfying, which is the same word everyone keeps using. He's also said he was emotional filming the final scenes, but that could mean anything. It could mean Hopper dies heroically. It could mean he survives and gets his happy ending with Joyce. Satisfying doesn't tell us much. The Joyce factor is complicated. Joyce and Hopper finally got together at the end of Season 4. They've both been through absolute hell, individually and together, and they finally admitted their feelings for each other. They deserve happiness. They deserve a chance to actually be together without the world ending around them. Killing Hopper now, just when they've finally sorted themselves out, would be incredibly cruel, but it would also be incredibly dramatic. And drama is what makes good television, unfortunately, for Joyce and Hopper. Here's the thing, though. The counter-argument is pretty strong. The Duffers already did the death fake-out. They already put the audience and the characters through the grief of losing Hopper. They already explored what the show looks like without him. Would doing it again, but for real this time, feel repetitive? Would it feel cheap? Or would it hit even harder because we've already been through it once and we know exactly how much it hurts? I think it could go either way. On one hand, killing Hopper for real after the fake-out would be a brutal gut punch. We'd let our guard down. We'd think, they already did this, they won't do it again. And then they would, and it would devastate us. On the other hand, it might feel like the Duffers are going to the same well twice, like they're out of ideas for how to raise the stakes. There's also the pattern of parental figures in the show to consider. Bob Newby died in Season 2. He was Joyce's boyfriend, a good man who got killed trying to help. We've already seen Joyce lose someone she loved to the Upside Down. Doing it again with Hopper would be repeating that trauma. Is that what the Duffers want? To show Joyce losing another partner? It seems excessive, honestly. But at the same time, Hopper is the classic protector archetype, and those characters almost never survive. He's the grizzled cop with a tragic past who's found something worth fighting for. That's textbook sacrifice material. His death would have enormous emotional weight. 11 would be shattered. Joyce would be destroyed. The entire group would feel it. If Hopper dies, it needs to mean something. It needs to save someone, probably 11. It needs to be heroic and meaningful, not just random or senseless. And based on what the Duffers have said about wanting deaths to resonate and serve the story, if they do kill Hopper, it'll be done properly. It'll hurt, but it'll feel earned. To be honest, I'm torn on this one. I think there's a genuine 50-50 chance Hopper doesn't make it. The setup is there. The narrative weight is there. But the fake-out death makes me uncertain. Would they really do it twice? I don't know. I really don't. What I do know is that if Hopper dies, it'll be one of the most emotional moments in the entire series. David Harbour has been brilliant in this role, and Hopper's death would be absolutely gutting to watch. Hopper's definitely in danger, but there's another character whose death would hit differently. Jonathan Byers just unproposed to Nancy, and that might be the most ominous thing that's happened all season. Let's talk about Jonathan Byers and one of the most emotionally complicated scenes in Volume 2, the unproposal. In Episode 6, Nancy and Jonathan find themselves trapped in a room that's rapidly filling with exotic matter goo. They genuinely believe they're about to die, and when you think you're dying, that's when the truth comes out. They start airing all their grievances. Nancy says she's always hated the clash. Jonathan admits he doesn't actually like reading her articles. She hates it when he gets stoned. They go through this entire laundry list of all the reasons they don't really work together, despite how much they genuinely love each other. And then Jonathan pulls out the engagement ring, the one he's been carrying around in a John Coltrane cassette tape case. He asks Nancy to not marry him. It's an unproposal. He says he thought getting engaged would somehow fix their relationship, but he realised it would just make things worse. And Nancy, through tears, accepts. They tell each other they love each other, and it's both extremely genuine and absolutely heartbreaking, because you can tell this is them ending things. The Duffer Brothers confirmed afterwards that yes, Nancy and Jonathan have broken up. It wasn't ambiguous. They're done. After years together, after everything they've been through, they finally admitted that they're not right for each other, and they're letting go. Now, here's where it gets ominous. In narrative terms, what does that breakup do for Jonathan's character? It frees him. He's no longer tied to Nancy romantically. That storyline is resolved. He's made peace with it. He said what needed to be said. And in stories like this, when a character resolves their main emotional arc, that can be a setup for them to exit the story entirely. Jonathan's role throughout the series has been as the protector, specifically Will's protector. He's the older brother who's always looking out for his younger sibling. In Season 1, when Will went missing, Jonathan was out there searching for him, taking photos, following leads. He's been there for Will through possession, through trauma, through everything. His identity is deeply tied to being Will's big brother. The older sibling sacrifice is a classic trope. The character who spent the entire story protecting their younger sibling finally makes the ultimate sacrifice to save them. It's tragic, but it feels right. It completes the arc. And with Will now in serious danger, with Vecna using him, with Will's powers putting him directly in harm's way, Jonathan might decide that saving Will is worth dying for. What's really interesting is that Jonathan's death would be less expected than Steve's. Everyone's talking about Steve. Everyone's predicting Steve. But Jonathan? He's not at the top of the prediction lists. He's not trending on social media. Killing Jonathan would be a surprise, which might be exactly what the Duffers want. They've said they're not trying to shock people, but they also like to subvert expectations. Jonathan dying instead of Steve would do that. Charlie Heaton, who plays Jonathan, has been relatively quiet during the Season 5 promotion. He hasn't been as visible as some of the other cast members, which could mean nothing, or it could mean something. Actors who are about to leave a show sometimes step back a bit. It's not definitive evidence, but it's worth noting. There's a theory that's been going around about the engagement ring becoming a tragic artifact. Imagine this: Jonathan dies during the final battle, Nancy survives, and afterwards she finds the ring. The cassette tape with the ring inside, this symbol of their relationship and their unproposal, becomes this devastating reminder of what they had and what they lost. It's the kind of emotional gut punch the Duffers love. The narrative weight of Jonathan's death would fall heavily on Nancy and Will. For Nancy, it would be losing someone she genuinely loved, even if they weren't right for each other. That's complicated grief. That's guilt and sadness and regret all mixed together. For Will, it would be losing his protector, his big brother, the person who's always been there for him. That would shatter him. Jonathan's death would also serve a thematic purpose. It would show that even the people who aren't in the spotlight, who aren't the main heroes, still pay the price. Jonathan's never had powers. He's not the guy with the bat. He's not the one coming up with the plans. He's just a guy with a camera who loves his family. And if he dies protecting them, it reinforces that ordinary people can be heroes too. To be honest, I'm not as confident about Jonathan dying as I am about Steve. The setup isn't quite as obvious. But the unproposal scene really bothers me. It feels like closure. It feels like the writers tying up loose ends. And when writers tie up loose ends, it's often because that character doesn't have much time left. Echoing what I said about Steve, the counter-argument is that both of them dying would be excessive. The show can't kill off both of Nancy's love interests. That would be cruel to Nancy and also feel like overkill. So if the choice is between Steve and Jonathan, Steve seems more likely based on all the other evidence. But if the Duffers want to surprise us, Jonathan's the pick. It's really up in the air with Jonathan. He could absolutely die. The pieces are there, but he could also survive and get a chance to figure out who he is outside of his relationships with Nancy and Will. Both outcomes feel possible. Jonathan's in the danger zone, but there's one character whose fate is even more complicated, and that's Eleven, whose entire existence might need to end to save the world. Eleven's potential death is the most controversial theory in the entire fandom, and for good reason. This is Millie Bobby Brown's character. This is the girl who started everything. The series literally begins with her escaping from Hawkins' lab. She's been the hero, the weapon, the victim, and the saviour all at once. Killing her would be an absolutely massive decision. But in episode 7 of Volume 2, Kylie dropped a bomb that has everyone panicking. She told Eleven that the only way to truly stop the cycle of experiments is for both of them to die. Let me explain the logic behind this because it's actually quite disturbing. Carly revealed that Dr. Kay, the new villain played by Linda Hamilton, has been continuing Dr. Brenner's work. But she's not just studying people with powers, she's harvesting them. Specifically, she's been taking Carly's blood repeatedly to use in experiments designed to recreate the conditions that produced Henry Creel and Eleven. Here's where it gets really dark. Pregnant women have been infused with this blood as part of Project Indigo. The goal is to create more children with telekinetic abilities. Dr. Brenner's program never actually ended. It just evolved. It went underground, got renamed, and kept going. And as long as Carly and Eleven are alive, their blood can be harvested and used to create more powered children who will inevitably be exploited and abused. Carly's position is brutally clear. Killing Vecna won't stop this. Blowing up the lab won't stop this. Someone will always rebuild. Someone will always rename the program and start again. The only way to break the cycle permanently is for the source material to disappear. That means Carly and Eleven need to die when the Upside Down collapses. They stay on the bridge when everyone else evacuates, when the exotic matter bomb detonates, and the bridge between worlds vanishes, they vanish with it. It's a trolley problem. Sacrifice 2 lives to save countless future children from being experimented on. From a utilitarian perspective, it makes sense. From an emotional perspective, it's absolutely devastating. What's really important is how Eleven reacted. She didn't immediately refuse. She looked uncertain. At the end of episode 7, there's this moment between her and Carly where it seems like Eleven might have agreed to the plan. Ross Duffer even said in an interview that there's a sense of dread or uncertainty that pervades the ending. A big question mark about what's going to happen to Eleven. Now, let's talk about why this would or wouldn't work narratively. On the one hand, Eleven has suffered more than almost any other character in this show. She was raised in a lab. She was experimented on. She was used as a weapon. She's had to save the world multiple times whilst barely having a chance to just be a kid. She's lost people she loved. She's been hunted by the government. Her entire life has been trauma after trauma. Killing her on top of all that would feel excessive. It would feel cruel. This is a character who deserves a happy ending. She deserves to go to school, have normal friendships, maybe go to that snowball dance without the world ending. She deserves to just be Eleven, or Jane, or whoever she wants to be, without the weight of everyone's survival on her shoulders. Killing her would deny her that chance at normalcy, and that feels wrong. On the other hand, there's something poetic about Eleven choosing to sacrifice herself. Not because she has to, but because she wants to. Because she spent her whole life being told what to do, being used by other people, and this would be her choice, her decision, her agency. It would be tragic, but it would also be empowering in a strange way. The thematic resonance is there too. 11 started this story as a weapon created by experiments. Ending it by ensuring no more weapons can be created would complete that circle. It would be her final act of defiance against the people who made her. They wanted to create superpowered children to use and control. She'd make sure they never could again. But here's why I don't think they'll actually do it. The Duffer Brothers have said repeatedly that this isn't Game of Thrones. They're not trying to shock people with brutal deaths. Matt Duffer specifically said that killing Mike would make the show not Stranger Things anymore. Well, killing 11 would do the same thing. She's the protagonist. She's the heart of the show. Yes, it's an ensemble cast, but 11 is the center of it all. Taking her out would fundamentally change what Stranger Things is. There's also Mike to consider. Mike and 11's relationship has been a core part of the show since season 1. They've been through everything together. Mike has told her she's not a monster. She's made him a better person. They love each other. Having 11 sacrifice herself would destroy Mike, and I'm not sure the show wants to end on that note. What's more likely, I think, is that 11 will lose her powers, but survive. That would break the cycle in a different way. If she no longer has telekinetic abilities, her blood becomes useless for Dr. K's experiments. She can't be harvested anymore. She gets to be normal, which is something she's always wanted. It's bittersweet because she loses this huge part of herself, but she gains the chance at an actual life. There's precedent for this too. The show has hinted multiple times that using her powers takes a toll on 11. She gets nosebleeds, she passes out, she's pushed herself to the brink before. Having her use every ounce of power she has to defeat Vecna, and then having nothing left, would make sense. It would be a sacrifice, just not a fatal one. Fun fact, Millie Bobby Brown has talked in interviews about how she's ready to move on from the role. She's been playing 11 since she was 12 years old. She's an adult now, with other projects and interests. That could support the theory that 11's story ends definitively, whether through death or through losing her powers and retiring from the supernatural world. To be honest, I think 11 survives. I think the setup with Carly's sacrifice plan is a red herring. It's meant to make us think 11's going to die, to raise the stakes emotionally, and then at the last minute, they'll find another way. Maybe Hopper takes her place. Maybe they destroy Project Indigo another way. Maybe 11 refuses and proves that breaking cycles doesn't require self-destruction. The Duffers love 11. The audience loves 11. Millie Bobby Brown's performance has been the backbone of this show. I don't think they'll kill her, but they'll make us think they will. And that uncertainty is part of what makes this finale so tense. 11's fate is uncertain, but there's another character whose story might need a tragic ending, and that's Will Byers, the character whose disappearance started everything. Will Byers started this whole story by vanishing into the Upside Down in November 1983, and there are genuine theories that he might not make it out alive this time, which is heartbreaking because this poor kid has been through absolute hell for 5 seasons straight. Noah Schnapp has been dropping hints for years now that Will's role in the finale would be massive. He said that the story started with Will, so it would end with Will. That quote has been analysed to death, and it could mean loads of things. It could mean Will gets a heroic moment. It could mean he's central to defeating Vecna. Or it could mean he dies, and his death bookends the entire series. It's ominous either way. Let's talk about what's actually happened with Will in Season 5, because it's been quite a journey. The big reveal in Episode 4, Sorcerer, was that Will has powers now. Not like 11's powers, which come from experiments and training. Will's powers are different. Mike explains it through Dungeons & Dragons terms, which is perfect for this group. In D&D, a wizard has to study intensely to use magic. They rely on preparation and knowledge. But a sorcerer's powers are innate. They're drawn from a higher being or a magical bloodline. They can summon their abilities at will without needing to practice or study. Will is a sorcerer. His powers come directly from Vecna through the hive mind connection that's existed since Season 1. When Vecna took Will all those years ago, he didn't just kidnap him and send him back. He left a connection, a tether. Will has been part of the hive mind ever since, even when he wasn't actively possessed. And now he can tap into that connection intentionally. He can siphon Vecna's strength and use it against him. We saw this in action in episode 5 when Will entered Vecna's mind and took over his body just long enough to stop him from killing Max and recapturing Holly. It was brilliant. Will used Vecna's own power against him, giving Max and Holly time to escape. But here's the thing that makes it tragic. Will can only use these powers when the hive mind is close. He's not generating his own magic, he's borrowing it. He's dependent on the very thing that's tormented him for years. Joyce recognised in episode 7 that Will doesn't need her protection anymore. She's been fiercely protective of her younger son throughout the entire series, which makes sense given everything he's been through, but she's finally loosening the reins. She's accepting that Will has grown up, that he's powerful, that he can contribute to this fight. And whilst that's a lovely character moment for both of them, it's also slightly terrifying because it puts Will directly in danger. Then there's Will's coming out scene, which was one of the most emotional moments in Volume 2. Will has been struggling with his identity throughout the series, and in episode 7, he finally tells everyone the truth. He gathers the party together and explains that whilst he's like them in every way, there's one thing that makes him different. He doesn't like girls. It's a quiet, powerful moment. The party supports him. Joyce supports him. He's accepted for who he is. What's really important about this scene, according to the Duffer Brothers, is that it gives Will confidence and maturity he hasn't had before. By confronting his fear and sharing his truth, he takes power away from Vecna. Vecna preys on people's worst memories and fears. If Will isn't afraid of who he is anymore, if he's accepted himself, then Vecna has less to use against him. It's beautiful character development, but it's also potentially tragic setup. In storytelling, when a character finally achieves acceptance and peace, that's often when they're most vulnerable to being killed off. They've completed their emotional arc. They've become who they needed to be. And then the story takes them away. Will's role in the finale plan is significant. He's going to be with 11 in the Upside Down when she confronts Vecna. His powers will be crucial for protection and possibly for the confrontation itself. If Vecna tries to send demogorgons or use the hive mind to attack the physical world, Will can counter that. He's become the sorcerer. He's embraced his connection to Vecna and turned it into a weapon. The poetic tragedy of Will dying would be enormous. His disappearance was the inciting incident of the entire series. Stranger Things begins with Joyce frantically searching for her missing son. It begins with Mike, Dustin, and Lucas looking for their friend. Everything that's happened since, all 5 seasons, all the deaths, all the trauma, stems from that one moment when Will was taken. If his story ends with him sacrificing himself to finally close the door to the Upside Down forever, that's a complete circle. It's devastating, but it's narratively satisfying in the way tragedies are. There's also the factor of Will's connection to Mike. Will has feelings for Mike. That's been confirmed in the show, even if it's never been explicitly addressed between them. Mike is with 11. Will knows that. He's accepted it. But those feelings are still there, and they add another layer of emotional complexity. If Will dies, Mike would carry that guilt and grief, the knowledge that his best friend loved him and never got to fully express it. The counter-argument is that Will has already been tortured enough. Season 1, he was trapped in the Upside Down, terrified and alone, barely surviving. Season 2, he was possessed by the Mind Flayer, which was absolutely horrific. He's had to deal with trauma, with being used, with feeling like he's cursed or wrong. Killing him now, just when he's finally found acceptance and power and confidence, would feel excessively cruel. Will deserves to live. He deserves to grow up, to figure out who he is outside of the trauma, to maybe find someone who loves him back. He deserves a normal life, or as normal as life can be after everything he's been through. The Duffers have said they're not trying to be gratuitously dark. Would killing Will cross that line? To be honest, I think Will survives. The setup for his death is there, but I think it's another red herring. The Duffers want us worried about Will so that when he makes it through, it's a relief. They've put him through so much already that adding death on top would feel like overkill. But I won't be confident about that until I see him alive in the final frame. Will's definitely at risk, but there's another character who's already been through hell. Max Mayfield technically died in Season 4, and honestly, that should be enough trauma for one character. Max Mayfield has already paid her dues. At the end of Season 4, Vecna broke her limbs, shattered her bones, and stopped her heart. She technically died. 11 brought her back, but Max has been in a coma ever since, trapped somewhere in Vecna's mindscape. She's been through more trauma than most of the other characters combined, and the idea that the Duffers would wake her up just to kill her again feels unnecessarily cruel. In Volume 2, we finally got what we've been waiting for. Max escaped Vecna's prison. She teamed up with Holly inside Henry's memories, found a way out through the traumatic cave memory where young Henry killed a scientist, and made it back to her own body. The scene of her waking up with Lucas by her side was genuinely lovely. After everything they've been through, after all the fear that she'd never wake up, she's finally back in the real world. That return feels significant. The Duffers could have kept Max in the coma for the entire season. They could have had her wake up in the epilogue after everything was over. But they brought her back now, in time for the finale, which means she has a role to play. And that role, according to the plan, is guiding 11 through Vecna's mind. Max knows that landscape better than anyone. She's been trapped there for months. She knows the ins and outs, the memories, the structure. She's the perfect guide. What's really important is that Max has already been Vecna's victim. She's already been targeted, broken, and nearly destroyed. Having her survive that ordeal only to die in the finale would feel like the writers are just piling on tragedy for the sake of it. It would feel gratuitous, which is exactly what the Duffers have said they're trying to avoid. There's also the Lucas factor. Lucas has spent the entire season fighting to save Max. He's been by her side while she's been in a coma. He's refused to give up on her. Their relationship is one of the most genuinely sweet things in the show. They're kids who care about each other deeply, and they've been through hell together. If Max dies now, after Lucas has fought so hard to get her back, that would be absolutely devastating for his character. And whilst devastating can be good storytelling, it feels excessive here. Fun fact that a lot of people missed from Season 4. The song that saved Max was Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush, and the lyrics are literally about making a deal with God to switch places with someone. There was a theory going around that Lucas would somehow make that bargain, that he'd sacrifice himself to save Max. But his odds on the prediction markets are quite long, about 8-1, which suggests most people think he's safe. And if Lucas is safe, then Max probably is too, because their fates are narratively linked. The symbolic weight of Max's survival is important. She represents the idea that you can come back from the brink, that even when Vecna breaks you, even when he gets inside your head and shatters you, you can still fight back. You can still survive. Killing her would undermine that message entirely. It would say that surviving Vecna once isn't enough, that he'll get you eventually anyway. That's bleak even for this show. Sadie Sink's performance has been absolutely brilliant, especially in Season 4, when Max was going through her grief and depression. The Dear Billy episode, where Max almost dies but is saved by the music, is one of the most emotionally powerful episodes in the entire series. Fans love Max. The character has depth and strength and vulnerability all at once. Killing her off would be a waste of all that character development. To be honest, I don't think there's any way Max dies in the finale. She's been through enough. The narrative has already put her through the ringer. She's earned her survival. The Duffers had their chance to kill her in Season 4, and they chose not to. They chose to have 11 save her, to keep her in the story. That decision matters. If they were going to kill Max, they would have done it then, when it would have had maximum impact. Bringing her back just to kill her later would feel like poor storytelling. Max should make it out alive. She'll probably have a long recovery ahead of her, both physically and emotionally. But she'll be alive, and she'll have Lucas. And that's what matters. Max is safe, which brings us to the complicated situation with Nancy Wheeler. Nancy just ended things with Jonathan and basically friend-zoned Steve, which either means she's finally free or in serious danger. Nancy Wheeler has just resolved the longest-running love triangle in the show, and the way she did it is quite interesting. She's not with Jonathan anymore. She's not choosing Steve either. She's choosing herself, at least for now, which could mean she's narratively free to focus on the mission, or it could mean she's in danger. Let's break down what actually happened with the love triangle, because it's been a thing since season 1. Nancy started dating Steve when she was trying to fit in, trying to be the popular girl. Then she fell for Jonathan, who understood her better, who saw her for who she really was. They got together at the end of season 1, and they've been on and off ever since. Meanwhile, Steve grew and changed and became a better person, and there's always been this question hanging over the series. Will Nancy end up with Steve or Jonathan? Volume 2 answered that question definitively. Neither. During the unproposal scene, Nancy admitted some hard truths about Steve. She said he's a good guy who makes her laugh, but they're ultimately too different. He knows exactly what he wants out of life. 6 kids, a big family, a very specific vision of the future. Nancy doesn't know what she wants yet, and she's not ready to commit to someone else's dream. It's a mature realization. Steve deserves someone who wants the same things he does, and Nancy isn't that person. With Jonathan, the breakup was about all the little incompatibilities they'd been ignoring. The clash, the articles, the weed, all these small things that added up to them not being right for each other. They love each other, genuinely. But love isn't always enough. Sometimes you love someone and still recognize that being together isn't the best choice for either of you. So Nancy's single. She's focused. She's ready for the final battle without romantic drama clouding her judgments. In narrative terms, that's quite powerful. She's not defined by which boy she chooses. She's defined by her own actions, her own choices, her own heroism. But here's where it gets complicated. Nancy's character development throughout the series has been about becoming this fierce, investigative journalist and fighter. She's the one who figured out the upside down in season 1. She's the one who went into the tunnels. She's the one who shot at Vecna. She's brave and smart and resourceful. Her arc has been about proving herself, about being taken seriously, about being more than just the pretty girl or the girlfriend. That arc feels incomplete. Nancy still has things to prove, stories to chase, a career to build. Killing her now would cut that journey short. She deserves to become the journalist she's meant to be, to expose the truth about Hawkins, to make a difference in the world. Her story isn't finished yet. There's a theory that's been floating around that Nancy's death would be the real surprise. Everyone expects Steve or Jonathan to die. Everyone's talking about them. But what if the Duffers went in a completely different direction? What if they killed Nancy instead? It would be a bait and switch. It would nullify the love triangle decision entirely. Both Steve and Jonathan would have to live with the fact that Nancy chose neither of them, and now she's gone. It would also be the first major loss for the Wheeler family. Mike, Nancy, and Holly have all been in danger at various points, but none of them have died. Their parents are still together. They haven't experienced the kind of devastating loss that Joyce or Hopper or Dustin have. Killing Nancy would change that. It would show that no one is safe, not even the characters, from stable, intact families. But I find it unlikely, to be honest. Nancy's too important to the story. She's too central to the group's functioning. She's one of the smartest characters, one of the best shots, one of the most determined fighters. Losing her would be a massive blow to the team's chances of actually defeating Vecna. And whilst that would raise the stakes, it would also feel like the writers sabotaging their own heroes. There's also the factor of Vecna's focus on Nancy in season 4. He showed her visions. He got inside her head. He targeted her, specifically. She survived that. She fought him off. Having her survive Vecna's direct mental attack only to die in the finale would feel a bit anticlimactic. If Vecna couldn't kill her when he was actively trying, why would she die now? Natalia Dyer has been brilliant as Nancy, and the character has grown so much over 5 seasons. She's gone from being somewhat superficial to being one of the most capable members of the entire group. That growth deserves to be honoured with survival, not cut short with death. What's more likely is that Nancy ends the series alive, single, and ready to move forward with her life. Maybe she goes to college, pursues journalism properly, exposes what really happened in Hawkins. Maybe she eventually reconnects with Steve or Jonathan in the future, or maybe she finds someone entirely new. The point is, her story continues beyond the finale. Nancy's probably safe, and so is the other main parent figure. Joyce Byers has been fighting for her kids since episode 1, and after everything she's been through, she deserves to make it out. Joyce Byers is the mother who has never stopped fighting for her children, and honestly, she's earned her happy ending. From the very first episode when Will went missing, Joyce has been this force of nature. She knew her son was alive when everyone else thought she was losing her mind. She communicated with him through Christmas lights. She went into the Upside Down to bring him home. And she's never stopped protecting him since. Over 5 seasons, Joyce has lost so much. Her relationship with Lonnie fell apart years before the show started. Bob Newby, her boyfriend in season 2, died saving her and the kids from demodogs. She thought she lost Hopper at the end of season 3, which devastated her. She's moved her family multiple times trying to keep them safe. She's worked multiple jobs to provide for Will and Jonathan. She's been through absolute hell, and she's done it all whilst trying to be a good mum. Winona Ryder's performance as Joyce has been one of the emotional anchors of the entire series. When Joyce is scared, we're scared. When she's determined, we believe her. When she breaks down, it breaks our hearts. She's not a superhero. She's just a mum who loves her kids more than anything, and that makes her incredibly relatable and powerful. In season 5, Joyce finally got something she deserves. She and Hopper are together. After years of dancing around their feelings, after thinking he was dead, after him surviving a Russian prison, they finally admitted they love each other. They're together. And whilst the world is ending around them, they have that. They have each other. Killing Joyce now would be excessively cruel. She's already lost Bob. Making her lose Hopper too, especially after they've just gotten together, would be piling on tragedy for no good reason. It would feel like the writers punishing Joyce for daring to be happy, which would be rubbish storytelling. There's also the pattern of mothers in Stranger Things to consider. Karen Wheeler is still alive. Claudia Henderson, Dustin's mum, is still alive. The show has been relatively kind to the mothers compared to the father figures and boyfriends. Bob died. Hopper was presumed dead. Billy's father was abusive. Ted Wheeler is useless, but at least he's alive. The mothers, though, tend to survive. They're the emotional foundation of their families, and taking them out would collapse that foundation entirely. Joyce's role in the finale is supporting the mission, but she's not in the most dangerous position. She's not entering Vecna's mind. She's not planting the bomb. She's coordinating, helping, being there for Will and Jonathan. That puts her at less risk than some of the others. Her relationship with Will has been particularly important in Volume 2. The scene where Will comes out to the group includes Joyce, and her acceptance of him is immediate and unconditional. She tells him she loves him exactly as he is. It's a beautiful mother-son moment, and it shows how far their relationship has come. Will doesn't need her to protect him physically anymore, but he still needs her love and support, and she gives it freely. Joyce and Hopper surviving together and getting their happy ending would be one of the few bright spots in what's likely to be an emotionally devastating finale. They've both been through so much individually and together. They deserve to rebuild their lives, to be there for their kids, to finally have some peace. The show needs that ray of hope, that sense that good things can happen even after tragedy. To be honest, I'd be shocked if Joyce dies. The narrative doesn't need it. Her death wouldn't serve a purpose beyond being sad for the sake of being sad. She's one that stands a pretty clear shot of surviving Stranger Things 5, and I'm grateful for that. Joyce is almost certainly safe, which brings us to the younger characters. Lucas, Dustin, and Mike are the core members of the party, the boys who started this whole adventure back in Season 1. The original party members, the boys who found Eleven in the woods and started this whole thing, are probably the safest characters in the entire show. Lucas, Dustin, and Mike have been through everything together, and whilst they've all faced danger, there's something about them that feels protected by the narrative itself. Let's start with Lucas Sinclair. Lucas has spent Season 5 absolutely dedicated to Max. He's been by her bedside while she's been in a coma. He's refused to give up on her. He's believed she'd come back when others had doubts. That devotion is lovely, and it's also a good indicator that he's probably going to survive. His story is tied to Max's, and if Max is waking up and surviving, then Lucas needs to be there for that. There was concern about Lucas when the Season 5 trailer first dropped. There are shots of him looking terrified, shots that made it seem like he was in serious danger. Fan theories started circulating that Lucas would make the ultimate sacrifice to save Max. The idea was based on the lyrics to Running Up That Hill, the song that saved Max in Season 4. The lyrics talk about making a deal with God to switch places with someone. What if Lucas literally did that? What if he bargained his life for hers? It's a romantic theory in a tragic sort of way, but the prediction markets don't support it. Lucas's odds are around 8-1, which are pretty long odds. That suggests most people, including the people actually betting money on this, think he's safe. And to be honest, I agree. Lucas dying would serve no real narrative purpose. It would just be sad. The Duffers have said they're not doing deaths for shock value, and Lucas's death would feel exactly like that. Caleb McLaughlin has been brilliant as Lucas, especially in Season 4, when he was caught between his basketball team and his real friends. He's grown so much as a character, and he deserves to see that growth continue. Lucas surviving, being there for Max as she recovers, helping her heal whilst he heals too, that's a much more satisfying arc than him dying young. Now, Dustin Henderson is the heart of the group in loads of ways. He's the funny one, the smart one, the one who lightens the mood even when everything's going to hell. Gaten Matarazzo's performance has made Dustin one of the most consistently enjoyable characters to watch. He's clever without being arrogant about it. He's loyal to his friends. He's got this brilliant relationship with Steve that's become one of the show's highlights. Dustin's role in Operation Beanstalk is crucial. He's the one who figured out that the Upside Down is a wormhole, not an alternate dimension. He's the one who explained the science behind what's happening. He's the one who added the bomb component to the plan. The group needs his brain. They need his ability to think through problems and come up with solutions. There's the "you die, I die" pact he made with Steve, which is both touching and terrifying. It's this moment of absolute brotherhood between them. They've been through so much together, from fighting demodogs to being tortured by Russians to navigating the Upside Down. They're best friends, even though there's an age gap. They genuinely care about each other. That pact could be foreshadowing for both of them dying together, which would be absolutely devastating. But I don't think that's where it's going. I think it's meant to show the depth of their bond, not to predict their deaths. If Steve dies, Dustin will be shattered, but he'll survive. He'll have to carry on without his best friend, which is its own kind of tragedy. But I don't think they both go. Dustin's comic relief role also protects him narratively. Shows like this need characters who can lighten the mood, who can make the audience laugh even in dark moments. Killing Dustin would remove that entirely, and the show would become relentlessly grim. The Duffers are going for satisfying, not soul-crushing. No chance Dustin dies. He's too important to the group's dynamic, too beloved by fans and too necessary for the tonal balance of the show. And then there's Mike Wheeler, who's had the least screen time in the trailers and promotional material, which has made some fans nervous. When a main character is suspiciously absent from marketing, it sometimes means they're being protected for a big twist. Could that twist be death? Matt Duffer addressed this directly in an interview with Variety. He said we'd see Mike become the leader again, but in a more confident and mature version than he was in season 1. That's not the language you use when describing a character who's about to die. That's the language of character growth and development. Mike stepping back into his role as the heart of the party, the one who brings everyone together. Mike's relationship with Eleven is foundational to the entire show. They met in season 1 when the boys found her in the woods. Mike was the one who believed in her, who saw her as a person rather than a monster or a weapon. Their relationship has been tested multiple times, but they always come back to each other. They love each other. Killing Mike would destroy Eleven emotionally, and I don't think the show wants to end on that note. There's also Will's feelings for Mike to consider. Will loves Mike, even though he knows Mike is with Eleven. That unrequited love adds complexity to their friendship. If Mike dies, Will would carry that grief and guilt forever. The knowledge that he loved his best friend and never got to fully express it, and now that friend is gone. That's heavy, but it doesn't feel like the direction the Duffers are going. What's more important is what Matt Duffer said about Mike dying fundamentally changing what Stranger Things is. He specifically said that just as a hypothetical, if you kill Mike, it's depressing. The show becomes not Stranger Things anymore. Mike is part of the core 4. He's one of the original kids. His survival is almost guaranteed by that statement alone. Finn Wolfhard has grown up on this show, just like all the young actors. He was a kid in season 1. He's an adult now. Mike's journey mirrors that. He's going from being a scared kid to being a confident leader. That's a complete arc that doesn't require death. It requires survival and the opportunity to keep growing. Mike's almost certainly safe. The core 4 boys minus Will are all safe. They started this adventure together, and they're going to finish it together. That's just good storytelling. The boys are safe, and so are most of the supporting players. But some side characters might not be so lucky. When it comes to supporting characters, the rules are different. Some are safe because they're too beloved or too young. Others are absolutely in the danger zone because their deaths would be sad, but not devastating to the core story. Robin Buckley is one of the safer supporting characters, and that's largely down to Maya Hawke's performance and how much fans love her. Robin was introduced in season 3 as Steve's co-worker at Scoops Ahoy, and she quickly became essential to the group. She's brilliant, she's funny, she's got this amazing dynamic with Steve, where they're platonic soulmates. Their friendship is genuinely one of the best relationships in the show. Robin's also important for representation. She came out to Steve in season 3, and that moment was handled beautifully. She's an openly gay character in a show set in the 1980s, which wasn't easy for anyone. The show has treated her identity with respect and care. Killing her would feel like the bury your gays trope, which is something I don't think the Duffers would do. They've been too thoughtful about her character for that. Her role in the finale isn't on the absolute front lines, which also protects her. She's part of the team, she's contributing, but she's not entering Vecna's mind or planting bombs. She's in danger, obviously, because everyone is, but she's not in the most dangerous position. Robin's probably going to make it out alive, and honestly, I'm grateful for that. Erica Sinclair is definitely safe. She's Lucas's younger sister, and she's been a scene stealer since she was introduced in season 3. Priya Ferguson plays her with this perfect combination of sass and vulnerability. Erica's tough, she's smart, and she doesn't take rubbish from anyone. But she's also still a kid, a young kid. The show isn't going to kill a child. Full stop. The Duffers have said they're not going for gratuitous darkness, and killing Erica would absolutely cross that line. She's too young, and her death would serve no purpose beyond being horrifically sad. No chance she dies. Erica's walking out of this finale alive, and probably with something sarcastic to say about the whole experience. Murray Bauman, on the other hand, is in a much more precarious position. Brett Gelman's character has been around since season 2, and he's provided some brilliant comic relief, whilst also being genuinely helpful to the group. He's the paranoid conspiracy theorist who turned out to be right about everything. He's helped translate Russian, he's fought alongside Joyce and Hopper, he's been there for the big moments. But here's the thing, Murray falls perfectly into the category of expendable comic relief. He's not a main character. He's not part of the core group. He's a recurring side character who people like but wouldn't be destroyed by losing. His death would tug on the heartstrings a bit without drastically impacting the plot. That makes him a prime candidate for a tragic but not devastating death. Once again, the cruel fate of being a comical side character. If the Duffers want to show that people are dying in this final battle without killing off anyone major, Murray's the obvious choice. He could go out heroically, doing something brave and important. It would be sad. People would cry. But the show would move on, and the core group would still be intact. To be honest, I think Murray's got maybe a 50-50 chance of survival. He could easily be the one casualty that shows the stakes are real without breaking the audience's heart completely. Karen Wheeler is another interesting case. Cara Buono has been playing Nancy and Mike's mum since the beginning, and for the most part, Karen's been kept separate from the supernatural stuff. She's the normal parent who doesn't know what's really going on. But Season 5 changed that. In Episode 4, when the Demogorgon broke into the Wheeler house to kidnap Holly, Karen fought back. She grabbed a broken wine bottle and used it as a weapon. She got slashed up, but she fought to protect her daughter. That was a massive moment for her character. Karen finally had her own heroic scene, her own chance to show what she's made of. And whilst it was brilliant to watch, it also puts her in a more vulnerable narrative position. Now that she's been involved in the action, now that she's been injured, she's fair game in a way she wasn't before. There are theories that Karen Wheeler is actually Alice Creel, Henry's sister who supposedly died. That would be a massive twist, and it would explain some things. But whether that's true or not, Karen's definitely more at risk than she used to be. The Wheeler family hasn't experienced major loss yet, unlike the Byers family or Hopper. Killing Karen would change that. It would give Mike and Nancy their own trauma to deal with. I don't think it's likely, but it's possible. Karen's in the moderate risk category. Not as endangered as Steve or Hopper, but not as safe as Joyce or the kids. And then there's Dr. K, played by Linda Hamilton. She's a new character in Season 5, and in stories like this, new characters are almost always at higher risk. We haven't spent years with them. We haven't formed the same attachment. Their deaths hurt less. Dr. K is also clearly an antagonist. She's continuing Dr. Brenner's work, harvesting Carly's blood, experimenting on pregnant women, creating new superpowered children to exploit. She's part of the problem that needs to be solved. And in narrative terms, antagonists tend to die. Especially antagonists who've done genuinely evil things. I'd put Dr. K's death at about 95% certainty. She's almost definitely not making it out of the finale alive. Whether she's killed by Vecna, by 11, by the bomb, or by something else, she's going down. And honestly, good riddance. Most of the supporting cast should survive, but there's one death we can all count on. Vecna absolutely, definitely has to die. There's no way Stranger Things is ending with Vecna still alive. That's the one prediction I can make with absolute certainty. Jamie Campbell. Bauer's terrifying villain has been the ultimate threat since his reveal in Season 4, and his defeat is essential for the story to have any kind of satisfying conclusion. Vecna, or Henry Creel, or One, whatever you want to call him, is the most powerful antagonist the group has ever faced. He's not just a monster, he's a person who became a monster. He was Dr. Brenner's first subject, the original child with powers. He was supposed to be Brenner's greatest success, but instead he turned on everyone, killed the other lab children, and would have destroyed 11 if she hadn't fought back and banished him to the abyss. Jamie Campbell. Bauer's performance has been genuinely unsettling. The way he plays Mr. Whatsit, this friendly imaginary friend to Holly, shows incredible range. He goes from charming and gentle to absolutely terrifying in seconds. The prosthetics and makeup for Vecna are horrifying, but it's Bauer's voice and mannerisms that really sell the character. He's not just a CGI monster, he's a thinking, feeling, vengeful being who believes he's doing the right thing. Henry's backstory adds complexity to his villainy. He wasn't born evil, he was a kid who stumbled upon some kind of technology in Rachel, Nevada, that gave him powers. Those powers changed him, twisted him, made him see humans as beneath him. By the time Dr. Brenner found him and brought him to the lab, Henry was already lost. He'd already killed. He'd already decided that humanity needed to be reshaped according to his vision. The plan to kill Vecna is straightforward on paper, but incredibly dangerous in execution. 11, with Carly and Max's help, will enter his mind whilst he's performing the ritual with the 12 children. They'll attack him psychically, hopefully weakening or killing him outright. Meanwhile, the bomb planted near the exotic matter will detonate, collapsing the bridge between Earth and the abyss. If everything goes according to plan, Vecna dies, the Upside Down vanishes, and the threat is ended forever. But there's a complicating factor that loads of fans have been discussing. Is Vecna actually the real villain, or is he possessed by something worse? The Mind Flayer has been lurking in the background since Season 2. It's this massive, godlike entity that seems to be pulling strings. Some theories suggest that Henry isn't in control at all, that the Mind Flayer possessed him when 11 banished him to the abyss, and everything Vecna's done since has been the Mind Flayer's plan, not Henry's. If that's true, then killing Vecna might not be enough. The Mind Flayer would still exist. It would still be a threat. It could possess someone else, start the cycle all over again. That's a terrifying possibility, and it's one the Duffers might explore in the finale. What's really interesting is whether we're supposed to feel any sympathy for Henry Creel. He was a victim first, in a way. A child who was changed by forces he didn't understand. But he made choices. He chose to kill. He chose to embrace his darkness. He chose to become Vecna. At what point does victimhood end and accountability begin? That's a question the show might grapple with. Honestly, I think Vecna dies, but the how is uncertain. Does 11 kill him in the mindscape? Does the exotic matter bomb destroy him physically? Does Will, using his connection to Vecna, somehow play a role in the final blow? There are loads of possibilities, and knowing the Duffers, they'll make it dramatic and emotional, and probably a bit unexpected. There's also the possibility of a tragic death for Vecna. Maybe in his final moments, Henry Creel resurfaces. Maybe he has a moment of clarity, of regret, of understanding what he's become. Maybe he helps them defeat the Mind Flayer before dying. That would be a more complex ending than just destroying a purely evil villain. It would add nuance and sadness to his death. But maybe that's giving him too much credit. Maybe Vecna is just evil, full stop. Maybe he deserves to be destroyed without any redemption arc, without any last-minute humanity. Some villains don't need complexity. Some villains just need to be stopped. Either way, Vecna's dying. It's just a matter of when and how and what it costs to make it happen. Vecna's going down, but there's another death theory that's even more. Carly dropped an absolute bomb in episode 7, suggesting that she and 11 both need to die to break the cycle of experimentation. And honestly, I am decidedly very against this plan. Here's the full logic behind it, because it does make a twisted kind of sense. Dr. K has been harvesting Carly's blood for months, maybe longer. She's using it in experiments designed to recreate the conditions that produced superpowered children like Henry and 11. Specifically, she's been injecting this blood into pregnant women as part of Project Indigo. The goal is to create a new generation of powered children who can be controlled and weaponized. As long as Carly and 11 are alive, their blood can be harvested. Even if they destroy the current lab, even if they kill Dr. K, someone else will rebuild. Someone else will restart the program under a new name. The cycle will continue forever. New children will be experimented on, exploited, traumatized, just like they were. Carly's solution is brutal in its simplicity. After they kill Vecna, after they rescue the children, they don't leave with the others. They stay on the bridge. When the exotic matter bomb detonates and the Upside Down vanishes, they vanish with it. No more blood to harvest. No more source material. The cycle ends. It's a trolley problem, basically. Sacrifice 2 lives now to prevent countless children from suffering in the future. From a purely utilitarian perspective, it makes sense, but emotionally, it's devastating. What makes it even worse is that 11 seemed to actually consider it. She didn't immediately refuse. At the end of episode 7, there's this look between her and Carly that suggests 11 might have agreed. Ross Duffer said there's a sense of dread or uncertainty that pervades the ending, a big question mark about what 11's going to do. The ethical complexity here is massive. Does 11 have a responsibility to prevent future suffering, even if it means sacrificing herself? Is it fair to ask that of her, when she's already given so much? She was experimented on. She was used as a weapon. She's saved the world multiple times. Hasn't she done enough? Doesn't she deserve to live her own life now? Kaylee's been through the same trauma. She was kidnapped, experimented on, her blood taken over and over. She escaped and built a life for herself, only to be captured again. Her anger and her desire to end the cycle make sense, but asking 11 to die with her feels like putting too much weight on a teenager who's already carrying the world. What's really disturbing is the idea that there's no other solution, that violence and sacrifice are the only answers. Surely there are other ways to stop Project Indigo. Expose it publicly. Destroy all the research. Hunt down everyone involved. Why does it have to end with 11 and Carly dying? To be honest, I think this is a red herring. I think Carly's plan is meant to raise the stakes emotionally, to make us fear for 11's life. And then at the last minute, they'll find another way. Maybe Hopper takes 11's place. Maybe they discover that destroying the exotic matter also destroys the viability of the harvested blood. Maybe 11 loses her powers instead of her life, which would achieve the same goal. The show has spent 5 seasons building up 11 as the hero. Killing her in a suicide mission feels wrong. It feels too dark, too hopeless. The Duffers have said they want a satisfying ending, and 11 dying doesn't feel satisfying. It feels tragic and nihilistic. I genuinely think 11 survives, and Carly's sacrifice plan gets rejected or modified. The setup is there to make us worry, but the payoff will be finding hope instead of embracing despair. Carly's plan is terrifying, but there are other kids whose fates we need to consider. Holly Wheeler and the other children Vecna has captured. Holly Wheeler has been through absolute hell, and she's like 7 years old. Nell Fisher's performance has been genuinely impressive, playing this young girl who's been manipulated, kidnapped, trapped in Vecna's mind, briefly escaped, and then captured again. The amount of trauma this child has experienced in the span of a few days is staggering. It all started with Mr. Whatsit, Vecna's friendly disguise, based on the character from A Wrinkle in Time. Jamie Campbell Bower played him as this charming imaginary friend, and Holly trusted him completely. She had no reason not to. He was kind and playful, and seemed to genuinely care about her, but of course it was all a trap. Mr. Whatsit was Vecna luring her in, manipulating her, grooming her to become one of his vessels. When the Demogorgon broke into the Wheeler house and took Holly, it was one of the most terrifying moments in Volume 1. Karen fought back with a broken wine bottle, which was brilliant, but she couldn't stop it. Nancy arrived home to find her mother bleeding and unconscious on the kitchen floor, and her little sister just gone. The guilt and horror on Nancy's face in that moment was devastating. Holly's been trapped in Vecna's constructed reality with the other children ever since. There are 12 of them total, including Derek Turnbow, the kid who bullied Holly at school but ended up kidnapped alongside her. These children are Vecna's vessels. He's using them to amplify his power, channeling their minds to help him merge Hawkins with the Abyss. They're not prisoners in the traditional sense, they're instruments. What's really disturbing is the Children of the Corn vibes the whole situation has. In episode 7, when Holly briefly escapes Vecna's mind and makes it back to the Creel house in the real Upside Down, the other children are completely under his control. They genuinely believe Mr. Whatsit is their saviour, and that Max is the evil one. They chant, "Back to the light, like they're in a cult. Even Derek, who Holly had started to bond with, turns on her. They call her horrible names and literally throw her down the stairs. It's proper unsettling watching children behave this way, even though we know they're being controlled. Vecna's got them completely under his spell, and breaking that hold is going to be part of the rescue mission. The plan, as outlined in Operation Beanstalk, includes rescuing all 12 children. Members of the party will climb the radio tower into the abyss, find the kids, and bring them back through the bridge to the real world before the bomb detonates. It's a race against time, basically. Get the kids out, get everyone out, blow the bridge, trap Vecna and the Mind Flayer in the abyss forever. Now, will the children survive? Almost certainly yes. The show is not going to kill a bunch of kids. That would be excessively dark, even for Stranger Things. The Duffers have been clear about not going for gratuitous tragedy, and slaughtering children would absolutely cross that line. These kids are innocent victims. They've been traumatized and manipulated, but they're not villains. They deserve to be saved. Holly specifically is definitely surviving. She's a Wheeler. She's Nancy and Mike's little sister. She's been a background character for 4 seasons, and season 5 finally gave her a real role. Killing her off after all that would feel pointless and cruel. She's going to make it out, and then she's going to need so much therapy. Honestly, all these kids are going to need years of therapy to process what they've been through. The rescue mission will probably be one of the more tense sequences in the finale. Getting 12 frightened, potentially still controlled children out of Vecna's fortress whilst the world's emerging and a bomb is ticking down. That's proper stressful, but they'll manage it. They have to. The kids should all make it out alive, which brings us to the bigger question about how the Duffers approach death. What have Matt and Ross Duffer actually said about killing characters? The Duffer brothers have been pretty open about their philosophy on character deaths, and it's both reassuring and terrifying at the same time. Matt Duffer specifically said, "This is Hawkins, it's not Westeros." That quote has become something of a mantra for fans hoping their favourites survive. He was making it clear that Stranger Things isn't Game of Thrones. There won't be a red wedding situation where half the cast gets slaughtered for shock value. They've also said repeatedly that they're not trying to shock or upset people. Matt said, "We just always want to think ahead and not just do it to shock people or because people have a bloodlust, which they seem to have. The deaths need to mean something. They need to serve the story." Eddie's death in season 4 is the example they keep pointing to. Eddie died heroically, and his death has resonated throughout season 5. Characters mention him. His sacrifice mattered. That's the standard they're holding themselves to. What's really interesting is that during the planning stage, everything was on the table. The Duffers literally had character names on a whiteboard, with options for who lives, who dies, who stays together, who breaks up. Nothing was off limits. They explored every possibility before making their final decisions. That's both comforting and terrifying, because it means they genuinely considered killing anyone. The word that keeps coming up in interviews is satisfying. David Harbour said it. The Duffers said it. Multiple cast members have used that exact word to describe the ending. Satisfying suggests bittersweet. It suggests that whilst there might be deaths, whilst there might be tragedy, it will all feel earned. It will make sense. It won't be gratuitous. The cast's reaction at the final table read tells us it's going to be emotional. There wasn't a dry eye in the room, apparently. But the tears weren't from a terrible ending. They were from genuine emotional impact. The ending is powerful and earned rather than just shock value kills. Based on everything the Duffers have said, here's what I think happens. Some characters die, but not many. Definitely Vecna. Probably Dr. K. Possibly Steve or Hopper or Jonathan or Murray. Maybe 1 or 2 others. But not a massacre, not a bloodbath. The core kids all survive. Joyce survives. Most of the main cast makes it out. The deaths that do happen will be heroic and meaningful. They'll serve the story. They'll hurt, but they'll feel right. That's what satisfying means in this context. We'll cry, but we'll understand why it had to happen that way. To be honest, I trust the Duffers. They've earned that trust over 5 seasons. They know these characters. They know this world. They know what the show needs. If they say it's satisfying, I believe them. And that, my dear friends, is where we'll end tonight's theories. In just a few days, on December 31st at 8 p.m. Eastern, we'll finally know who lives and who dies. We'll see if Steve Harrington makes it out. We'll find out if Hopper survives. We'll learn Eleven's fate and Will's role, and whether the Duffers really did surprise us. I've spent all this time speculating and theorizing and analyzing, but honestly, part of me just wants to go in blind and experience it. Whatever happens, it's been an incredible journey. Stranger Things has been a phenomenon for nearly a decade. These characters have meant so much to so many people. However it ends, that won't change. I'll probably do a reaction video after the finale drops, breaking down everything that happened and whether my predictions were anywhere close to accurate. Until then, get some rest, stay cozy, and prepare yourselves emotionally for what's coming. It's going to be a wild ride. Stay safe and sweet dreams.